Hello everyone, my name is Cthulhu Girl. Today we will continue our playthrough of Urtuk the Desolation. Last episode, we completed our first 3 battles and gained 2 ranged party members. This episode, we'll look to conquer our first village and search for a clue to Urtuk's mutation. To start off, we'll travel to the southeast, where we find the 2 banners we previously saw are in fact villages. We'll also get a notification of a rumor that one of the villages in this area has a secret entrance to the swamp. We'll want to find this new area to continue our search for Urtuk's cure. Looking at the 2 villages, we see one will provide us with flesh and the other with Terillium. Flesh is useful in crafting medicine, while Terillium is a currency. Since our overall goal is to find the entrance to the swamp, though, we'll want to capture as many villages as possible. We'll start by capturing the southern village and plan to wrap around the mountains to reach the second one afterwards. For the first village, we'll be up against 7 hostile beasts. Hostile means they'll actively seek us out instead of waiting for us to get close to attack them. They also outnumber us, since we have only 5 party members. This will be our first normal difficulty fight. We start off by taking a look at the map. The enemy positions to the north and southwest are the most exposed, and even though the position to the north has more initial enemies, I actually prefer it. The enemies there look melee, and since they're hostile, they should come out of the fortification to fight us. It's also the easier fortification to take, as there are multiple ways up, and we can close those off using Boritio's terrain abilities. We'll divide our party into 2 assault squads and begin the battle. But before we move anyone, we'll take a look at the enemies we haven't seen before. The Flesh Beast has a lot of healing traits, immunity to force movement, as well as the ability to poison. The March Beast has similar healing and forced movement immunity, but uses acid to weaken armor and taunts opponents. The Beast Karwala we've seen before, and it has only healing traits. The Beast Turtle has armor and can stun, with extra damage to stun targets on top of some healing and forced movement immunity. And finally, the Beast Porcupine is the only ranged opponent and uses poison. Now that we're familiar with the new enemies, we'll move up with Bobrysk, place a trap to stop enemies advancing on us, and take a shot at the Flesh Beast. We choose this one over the Beast Rhino because the fortification the Beast Rhino is standing in greatly reduces range damage. For future reference, it also negates forced movement, although many of these enemies negate that innately. We then move up with the rest of our forces and give Boritio a little elevation to negate some of the damage penalty from attacking enemies above us. Due to the shorter range of the javelin over the crossbow, though, he isn't able to attack this turn. We'll put Desarge in front of him to protect him. We'll also move Pelen up next to Bobrysk. However, I made a small mistake here. As we've seen before, the Beast Rhino has a charge attack. This allows the Beast Rhino to charge over Bobrysk's trap without triggering it, getting it out of the fortification, but causing Bobrysk to take a good chunk of damage. The Flesh Beast also starts healing back the damage we dealt to it, and chooses to navigate around towards Pelen instead of following the Beast Rhino and getting surrounded by our second force. Despite being hostile, the other enemies stay in their fortifications for now, giving us another turn to focus on our first 2 opponents. Now that the Beast Rhino has left the fortification and is on lower terrain, we'll move Boritio onto higher elevation to reap the extra damage. We'll then move Urtuk into position to get a critical hit against the Beast Rhino. We'll also use his lead ability to allow the other melee unit in range of the target, in this case Pelen, to get an attack on it as well. Because of our positioning, this is also a critical hit. However, we just barely don't kill it. To get the final hit, we'll move up Desarge. This does force him to walk over the spikes and take damage, but I think it's worth it to save the remaining turns from Bobrysk and Pelen to focus on the Flesh Beast. Because of the Flesh Beast's cannibalism trait, it will gain additional regen from its ally going down, making it more and more important that we focus it down before it can reap the benefits of that regeneration. We'll start by moving Bobrysk up to higher elevation with Boritio to gain extra damage, plus his extra damage against monsters, bringing the Flesh Beast under 200 life. Ideally, we now move up with Pelen to finish off the Flesh Beast, as it currently has enough regen to more than double its health. But we want to be smart about this and not get Pelen into a fight against the Marsh Beast. Remember, the Marsh Beast has acid to weaken armor, and Pelen is our only armored unit. Plus, it has Taunt to keep one of our units engaged. So before moving up, we'll check the ranges of the Marsh Beast and the Range Beast Porcupine to make sure Pelen won't get pulled into a fight with them. Once the ranges look good, we can move up with Pelen to get ranged assistance from Bebrysk to finish off the Flesh Beast before it can regenerate. After the enemies move up, we'll get a turn with Boritio. Using his terrain manipulation ability, we can raise the terrain in front of the fortification by 1, effectively removing the way up to the southwest path and gaining further elevation damage for Boritio to attack the Marsh Beast. Notice that even this elevation difference of only 3 hexes is an extra 50% damage. We then look to use Urtuk's Lifesteal Strike ability on Desarge. Since it's liable, he'll take more damage as a frontline unit, especially with his Berserker Duelist ability. Before using it though, we want to take note of the Beast Porcupine's Poison ability, as poison significantly reduces healing. This makes it all the more important for us to take down the Beast Porcupine, although in general I prefer to focus down ranged enemy units as early as possible given their damage output and relative squishiness. To prepare for the Marsh Beast, we'll move up Desarge, but keep him behind the rock outcroppings we can use as cover. I'm looking to use these rocks as a choke point where we can get Desarge and Pelen into 2v1 melee combat, with Bebrysk and Boritio providing range support from a safe elevated position. As we get to the Beast Carwall's turn, there's some additional features of the terrain I'd like to point out. You may notice the Beast Carwall is moving away from us. This is not because it's retreating. The terrain to the north, northwest, and west of the Beast Carwall's position is all impassable, forcing the Beast Carwall and its companion Beast Turtle to path around to the south before they can reach us. This will provide us with a lot of time to focus on the enemies one at a time and not let their initial numbers overwhelm us. As we'll see a little later, there's also further terrain blockage along the south which will force the enemies to pass west for a few turns before they can come north to attack us, making the position we've taken ideal for dealing with these mostly melee opponents. We move Pelen back behind the rock outcropping as planned, and have him shield Desarge, hoping to lure the Marsh Beast into our choke point. Expectedly, on the enemy turn, the Beast Porcupine moves up and attacks, poisoning Bebrysk and dealing a good amount of damage to him. In this case, Bebrysk is the target instead of the closer Boritio, as he has both lower health and lower elevation. The Marsh Beast, on the other hand, attempts to move around our choke point, both to avoid the 2v1 engagement we've set up and to get away from our ranged units. On Urtuk's turn, we'll consider using Lifesteal Strike on Bebrysk. Since he's already poisoned, the healing will be reduced, but given the damage he's taken so far, it may be necessary to keep him alive against the Beast Porcupine, so we'll go with it anyway. We could then move Desarge out to attack the Marsh Beast, but this would move him out of our fortified position, and if we fail to kill the Marsh Beast, he'd be in easy position to get focused by the Marsh Beast and the Beast Porcupine. Given his damage output though, it probably would have been better to move him out and focus down the Marsh Beast, especially given how far away the other enemies are on the map. Instead, we keep him behind the rocks and forego damage from him this turn. Boritio and Bebrysk will then focus down the Beast Porcupine. Given our elevation bonus and Bebrysk's extra damage versus monsters, the squishy ranged unit quickly goes down. Even with this high damage output from Bebrysk, his Lifesteal Strike won't be able to heal him for much due to the poison. We also spend a bit of stamina to throw down another bear trap. This should capture the Marsh Beast if it doubles back and tries to go for Pelen and use its acid to eat his armor. With the kill on the Beast Porcupine, we unlock an achievement trait on Bebrysk. Achievement traits, like Bebrysk's Strong vs. Monsters trait, are traits that are initially hidden but unlock when certain conditions are met. By continuing to trigger those conditions, the trait gains in strength up to a cap. In this case, we must kill 2 enemies within 2 turns to progress the trait. The trait gives a speed boost after killing an enemy, allowing the affected character to act again sooner and pump out more damage. Bebrysk still has 1 remaining hidden trait left, shown with a string of question marks in his trait list. With the beast porcupine down, we'll move Pelen up to attack the marsh beast. Bobrysk isn't able to provide range support to finish it off because of the risk of hitting Pelen, but also because he's out of stamina. This is shown by the exhaustion icon next to his health bar. The marsh beast responds by moving up to engage Desarge. It could have stayed to fight Pelen and weaken his armor, but likely because of the range support from Bobrysk and Bohortio, it opts to take cover behind the rocks. This taunts Desarge and gives him the acid debuff. We move up Urtuk to assist, but for some reason the range indicator doesn't let us move next to Desarge immediately, so we have to make the move in 2 goes. Perhaps distracted by this, I also missed out on using Urtuk's lead ability, which would have let Desarge attack and finish off the marsh beast. But since it'll be a while until the next enemies get to us, this doesn't have much of an effect. On the enemy's turn, we can see the terrain effect I mentioned earlier. Because of the number of blockages, the remaining enemies are being forced to walk all the way around to the west side before they can move north to engage us. This means we have several more turns to prepare for their arrival. Because they'll be coming in from the southwest, we'll need to move Bobrysk and Bohortio so they'll be in range. To that end, we start shuffling them north off their fortification, and make use of Bobrysk's light foot ability to be able to swap with Bohortio and keep moving. We take a moment to see if we could line up a shot with Bobrysk on the marsh beast, but forego it in the end because of the possibility of friendly fire. Due to the marsh beast's taunt, Desarge automatically uses his turn to attack it and finish it off. This leaves only 3 enemies left on the map and several turns for them to reach us. We'll use this time to prepare for their arrival. This primarily consists of moving back our melee units and using Bohortio's terrain manipulation abilities to create a perch from which he and Bobrysk can attack. Since the first enemy will be coming in from the southwest, we'll need something where our ranged units can hit the choke points on either side of the southwest rock pillar. To do this, we'll move Bohortio up and start raising terrain. His terrain manipulation works both to raise and lower terrain, but in this case we want to gain elevation for additional damage. He can only manipulate the terrain immediately next to him, and the resulting level must still be accessible from the hex he's on. He also can't manipulate tiles with effects on them, such as spikes or the tall grass he's currently standing in. Bobrysk, meanwhile, is still taking damage from the poison, dropping him very low on health. This is the last turn of poison, however, and he still has 1 charge of lifesteal strike from Urtuk to regain some health once he gets a shot off on an enemy. For now, we'll continue building a perch with Bohortio and shuffling our units around to get our melees in front. When the beast turtle gets in range, we take a shot with Bobrysk and miss due to the cover it has from the rock pillar. This does not consume Bobrysk's charge of lifesteal strike, however, so he'll be able to try again on his next attack. I briefly considered moving Desarge up to engage the enemy, but then decided against it. If he moves up, the beast turtle will engage him outside of Bohortio's range, and will lose out on damage shuffling him down the slope, both from lost time and lost elevation. Instead, we use Bohortio's turn to gain more elevation. Bohortio's terrain manipulation does have a limit, but it gains new charges very quickly. He now has a 3 hex elevation bonus over the oncoming enemies, which, as we saw before, offered a very strong damage bonus. On Bobrysk's turn, he follows Bohortio up the mountain. The rock pillar still provides cover for the beast turtle, but with his strong vs. monsters trait, he gains an extra shot. The first shot hits, and does good damage to the beast turtle's armor, although the second shot misses. The beast turtle then tries to move to another spot of cover, and path toward Urtuk, but gets caught in Bobrysk's trap from earlier. Before engaging, we'll check the positions of the other enemy to make sure it won't be in range if we move up, and then review the beast turtle's traits. The most notable traits are its stun abilities and bonus damage against stun targets. We then feel safe to move up Desarge and attack, breaking the enemy's armor in 1 turn. On Bohortio's turn, we then make use of his light foot ability to swap places with Bobrysk and keep moving, getting him in range to land a hit on the beast turtle while still maintaining a small amount of elevation bonus. On Urtuk's turn, we'll move up to the beast turtle and attack. We use his lead ability, but aren't able to get the benefit because Desolation is out of breath and can't attack. There's no harm in doing this, however, as it doesn't cost any additional stamina for Urtuk over a normal attack. On the enemy turn, we then see the beast Carwall is heading around to the west while the second beast turtle is approaching from due south. We can likely then expect the Carwall to take at least another 2 turns to reach us, allowing us to focus on the beast turtles. On Palen's turn, I move him up to swap with Desolation, but after being spoiled by Borhitio and Bobrysk, I forget that this ends his turn since he doesn't have the light foot trait, and he's thus not able to attack. This turns out alright, however, as on Bobrysk's turn he manages to land a 50% shot over the beast turtle's cover, dealing enough damage with the bonus elevation and Stronger's monster's trait to kill it. The second beast turtle then moves up toward the fortified position we held at the beginning of the match. With only 2 enemies left on the map, I feel confident moving away from our current choke point to engage it. We move Borhitio back toward the prior fortification, remembering that we blocked off the path in the direction of the beast turtle so it can't climb up in front of him from its current position. The enemy Carwall continues to move around the west side, so we'll move our melee units further east to focus on the beast turtle before it can reach us, and move further back to force the beast turtle to come within range of our ranged units. With it taking the bait, we're able to move up to elevation with Borhitio and land an elevated attack, followed by Desolation who's able to break its armor. Due to the rock pillar, however, the ranged attack from Bobrysk misses. With the beast Carwalla advancing, we'll move Urtuk over to give a lifesteal strike buff to Bobrysk. I don't expect him to need this, but if things somehow go terribly wrong, I'd like to have a way for him to get some more health. Using abilities like this might also help Urtuk gain more experience, but I'm not really sure. Bobrysk then takes another 50% shot at the beast turtle, bringing it down within 1 hit of being killed. We can then move up with Palen to deal the finishing blow, leaving us with only 1 enemy left on the map. Since this is the beast Carwalla coming from the southwest, we'll move Borhitio back to the west as well. I don't expect him to get all the way back up his perch before the beast Carwalla gets here, but we'll need him to be further west to be in range at all. I then consider moving Urtuk back to make sure there's room for Palen and Desolation to engage the enemy, but ultimately decide against it. Doing so would either move him too far out of range or get in the way of Borhitio moving into a more favorable position. The enemy beast Carwalla then moves up to the cover position we've seen so many of the other enemies use. Bobrysk considers moving to try to get a better angle, but since there isn't another position where we'll be able to avoid the rock cover, we decide to keep the elevation and take the shot, which results in a miss. On Desolation's turn, we can't move him up to attack the beast Carwalla because of Palen's position, and once again because doing so would keep the enemy at a bad position for Bobrysk. So, we pull back both Desolation and Palen in hopes of engaging the enemy after it engages us, preferably by walking into the remaining trap. We'll also move Borhitio into position to be in range of the beast Carwalla when it engages. The beast Carwalla then engages us through the trap. We move Desolation over before attacking so we can easily move Palen in range, but this ends up not being needed as Bobrysk gets the kill from his elevated position. After completing the battle, we can see that both Bobrysk and Urtuk have leveled up. With the life essence we just earned, we can also extract up to 2 of the offered mutations. These include the acid debuff to eat armor, bloodlust to gain health off killing an enemy, stalwart for immunity to many forced movement abilities, and leeching criticals to heal off of critical hits. I decided to go with bloodlust here as I think it will fit very nicely on Desolation. I also considered taking the acid mutator, but so far we've been breaking through armor fairly quickly, and the acid effect takes 3 turns to have its full effect. To make sure we don't forget, we'll then immediately equip the bloodlust on Desolation. I think it works well for his class as a berserker and his berserker duelist trait. We then spend the points for Urtuk's level up, and in this case I put all of them into strength. As useful as his lifesteal strike and Aegis are, his regeneration can also be used for taking frontline damage, and his lead ability is great for focusing down enemies, so I'd like to have him in the front more. For Bobrysk, we'll also put points into damage, but 1 into agility, as I don't want to neglect his speed since the more often his turn comes up, the more attacks and range support triggers he can get off. Now that our party is leveled up, we can take a look at the village we freed from the hostile beasts. The grateful villagers give us some medicine, which we can use to heal any party members that go down. They also reiterate the advice we received earlier that the cure for Urtuk is not in this zone, and we'll need to find the village that leads to the swamp. However, that's all we can do for now. This village doesn't have anything more for us. That's also where we'll leave off for today, as the village takeover took much longer than expected. With that, we've completed our second episode of Urtuk the Desolation. We've taken over our first village, and now know we need to find a village with a hidden path to the swamp to continue our search for Urtuk's cure. Next time, we'll take a look at the second nearby village and see if we can get lucky. Remember to leave any feedback in the comments, like the video if you liked it, and subscribe for the next episode. This has been Cthulhu Girl, and remember to use elevation, everyone.